Hey, vid rehabbers, how you guys doing? I've got Angela, my partner in crime again. Welcome, Angela. Thanks for
Hi
joining
everyone.
me.
Yeah, I can
Are
hear
you
you.
you're actually training somewhere, aren't you? You're doing some courses.
Yeah, we're at Greyfriars at the moment. I've got 14 students doing the new level 3 qualification, level 3 certificate in canine hydrotherapy, and then we're carrying on for another week. So we're just crazy people. So we're doing 3 full weeks of training with no days off. So we're doing another week of gait, applied treadmill, which is advanced treadmill, and behaviour, so that we're taking people onto higher level 4 qualifications, award and diploma. So it's quite exciting. We're really moving forwards now, and they're a great bunch of students having great fun. So yeah, I think we've physically broken a couple, but it's a 2 week interview to see if you can handle being a hydrotherapist.
Awesome. Thanks to those guys that are online. I'm sorry if we're a little bit late. We had some technical issues, but hopefully you guys can all see us and hear us. Angela and I wanted to come online today just to chat about supporting our staff to continue to learn, to do continuing education. And obviously, this is a topic that I'm very passionate about because it's, what we do at Online Pet Health. We provide continuing education. Angela, I think one of the things that is tricky is, when you have staff, when you are looking at sort of providing or giving them a CPD allowance or CE allowance, there's always this concern, that you will invest in one of your staff members and then the next minute, they get their qualification or whatever and they leave. How do you handle that at Greyfriars?
Most of my staff that start with me are already qualified. They need to be to start. So often they've invested in their own training. So they're very proactive people that have put money into developing their career. We do take on some juniors. They work with us for some time before I'll spend any money on their training because they can do in-house training with the senior people. But I think it's a really big concern for a lot of, we're lucky because we're a training provider, so we can do a lot of in-house stuff. But I encourage them to study. I encourage them to do more. I want well-rounded, well-educated staff. But I see it with a lot of other employers where they'll send someone for training, they train, within 6 months they're leaving. They've just spent £3,000-4,000 training a member of staff and they're leaving. So I know a lot of them now have contracts in place with clawback clauses that say, on a sliding scale, basically, if I'm going to invest £4,000 or £5,000 in your training, and you leave under a certain time, then you will be expected to repay that out of your salary. But you're always vulnerable, especially if they've just been paid and they walk out, and then you've got to take sort of legal route to recover that. So, but I certainly know, and I certainly do encourage everyone who sends people to train with us, if they're members of staff, that they should really have known them for some time, not just take on someone new, say I'll pay for all your training and hand it to them on a plate. It's got to be earned. It's one of the reasons we started doing some lower level assistant qualifications, so that people can just test someone, see if they'll commit when they're doing training. Will they get their homework done? Will they get it back on time? Will they actually finish their qualification and be a valuable member of staff? And that's quite a test, and some do fall by the wayside. So you'd rather start low rather than go for the full qualification.
Yeah, so for those of you guys that are online, we'd love to hear from you. So if you employ people, do you give them a CPD allowance? For those of you that are employed, how does your CPD work? Is it up to you? I think for one of these things, like I think about when I was in practice, we didn't really, unfortunately, have CPD specifically in veterinary rehabilitation in South Africa at that time. So I wasn't really in that position. But, if there was, I definitely would be inclined to want to send my staff because the more they know, the better they can be and the better the practices. So, there are different things, obviously, that we could recommend to our staff. Do you have any ideas of like free things that we could suggest to the vet rehabbers to send their staff on, and ways in which they can learn that it's not going to cost them any money?
One of my top of my list is when we have veterinary practices and they're doing free CPD seminars, evening lectures, that kind of thing. And I certainly encourage the staff to do that. We might all go out as a team for an evening out. It's not everyone's idea of a good evening out, but it's free, very specific. The vet practice are promoting themselves and their facilities, so they're usually quite decent, high-level lectures. But also from us doing our job and representing our company, if they see that my staff are keen to attend, interesting, have good questions, then they also get to know us as a company. So it's quite a good subtle way to promote your commitment to standards and education as well. If any member of staff approaches me and wants to do training, I will encourage them. I'll give them time off. I may not pay for it all. I might do part funding. I want some commitment from them. But obviously, if in the UK they're members of the Canine Hydrotherapy Association or the National Association of Registered Canine Hydrotherapists, they're required to do 25 hours for CHA, 20 hours for NARC of specific allowable CPD or continuing education. And my staff know that if they get suspended because they haven't done the education that they should have been doing during the year, and they can't rush and do it all in the last week of the year. If they're suspended, they won't be allowed to work. And I find that kind of sharpens up their education demands, but you'd rather they did something relevant that's useful, that complements their skills every day.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I find, if I think about the veterinary conferences that have been, so conferences that are not specific for canine hydrotherapy or for veterinary rehabilitation, there is CPD that's there, but I find that it's quite broad. So I've attended streams of lectures at World's Small Animal Veterinary Association conferences, and there'll be a whole day on rehabilitation. And I'd come out of it saying, well, that was a good sort of refresh, but I didn't really learn anything because it's not targeted at us. It's actually targeted at the vets and vet techs that don't have a lot of knowledge in our field. So that's one of the things that I find, where specific actually continuing education and specific learning in canine hydrotherapy or vet rehabilitation therapy is so important.
Yeah, and I agree. And I've had that quite a few times now, where once you've been working for a certain amount of time, you're qualified, you've moved on, that you want very specific education. And I've come out frustrated and said, well, it was entertaining, but I've spent a lot of money and a lot of time to get there, and I haven't really learned anything. I would say the IAVRPT is very specific. Quite high level education, but even there I found actually attending the early morning lectures and wet labs and things like that maybe more focused, so that you're not, there's almost, how much can you learn about cruciate repair and osteoarthritis? There's obviously lots, but you get to a point where you think, well, I'm not really learning, unless there's something new, a new surgery. I know this stuff now. I've learned it. Yes, it's a refresh, but I want to learn new stuff, or I want to take my skills further. And I think my staff feel very much the same way, and I think that's where we need to check out the lecturers, their knowledge. Have they got just an interest in an area, or are they a specialist qualified vet in that area? Can they actually bring something to the education? If they're talking about hydro, do they have hydro experience, hydro training? Do they regularly refer for hydro? Because if they don't, they're talking about something, but they don't have the specific knowledge that we have. I know recently over the summer in the UK, there's been some lectures, at sort of festivals, veterinary festivals, things like that. And people have come out frustrated because they felt actually the information being given to them was either wrong or off the mark, or not detailed enough for the specific audience. And I think you're right, that's because it's aimed at vet nurses and vets who perhaps don't know very much about hydro or rehab, and it's really to introduce and talk about it on a surface level, but not in the detail that we need.
Yeah, so I think we always have to think about, if we're sending our staff to these type of things, is it actually worth their while? Because we only have a certain amount of time, and the time, if they're leaving the practice to go to conferences and things, we want them to be able to actually get some value out of that conference and not actually just some broad knowledge.
And that's Yeah, that's value for the business in investing in that, but it's also value for the member of staff that they're actually paying attention and listening. Very often these things are on weekends or evenings, and they're away from their family. So maybe you're not paying them to go, but you're funding it, and they've got to feel it's worth their time away as well, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, I must say, I feel, that it is on the individual to actually want to learn. So I think, if I think back now to veterinary practice, so I worked in the UK in a number of different practices, and we were very fortunate to actually have a continuing education allowance. But there was a certain amount, and I can remember going to big conferences, and people would just stay in the hotel and party all night, and never end up going. Maybe go to one or two lectures, and the poor practice owner was never aware of this. So I can wholeheartedly say that was not me. I am the kind of person who goes to a conference and I'm there from the start to the finish. So I was taking every opportunity to learn, but it does have to come from that staff member. And obviously those are the type of staff members who want staff members that are willing to learn, they want to be better. And I always say, to the vet rehabbers, please don't do continuing education for points. Do it because you want to be better, that you want to learn more for your patients, because it's the animals in the end that are benefiting from everything we learn from conferences, webinars, courses, whatever. It's actually the animals in the end. And for me, I encourage all of you guys to do learning because you want to be a better therapist. How do you find for the staff that you've had, has there been a willingness to want to learn? Have you had situations where you've struggled to get a certain person or staff member to actually want to improve their knowledge?
I would say my lead staff all absolutely want to improve their knowledge, and they're quite competitive with each other, actually. And, they'll come down to the office and say, I listened to this last night. It's really great. You've got to listen. And because I'm thinking, oh, my God, I've got 5 more things I need to do. And it's hard to do it yourself and find the time. But if they've seen something they think was great, they will all share. They've got a WhatsApp group. They'll all share, listen to this, guys. It was great. It was really interesting. And I walk into conversations that have developed from what they've seen the night before. Either it was really good, or they thought that the information that was given was bad. They're listening to stuff over the weekend. They're picking up recommendations of Facebook and sort of specialist WhatsApp groups, that kind of thing. So they're all quite cooperative and sharing, but quite competitive as well. And I think that's to be encouraged. So if they've got something specific they want to do, I will fund it or part fund it, as I say, but it's got to be really worthwhile. The problem we have is obviously with a small team, not everyone can be off work attending the same thing at the same time. We'd have to close. And, I've got a few hydrotherapists working for me, but smaller practices, it's probably going to be the boss and their 2 staff that go. So you've got to work out when can you go, and the extra cost of shutting for that day to go and do some medication. Can you get those appointments back in another time, or have you just lost it? Because that's a big additional cost to the smaller practices.
Yeah, I think that's one of the problems. So, I mean, I actually did a post on the Facebook group. I think it was a small animal group, just looking at numbers. So, like, basically how many people are in a practice, and the majority were actually one-man practices. And that's one of the biggest problems, when you are 1 or 2 man. So if you say you've just got 1 staff member, for you or the other person to go to a conference, they've got to travel. There's the cost involved of getting them there, the hotel fees, all of that. And it's that time away from practice. And so obviously in today's day, we have online. So obviously that's where online pet health hydro webinar comes in. We obviously have that platform. We've got all the different platforms. And conferences, we've got our Vet Rehab Summit, which is at the end of the year, which is a 3-day conference now, which we're so looking forward to. So there are obviously the benefits now of the internet, where we can actually learn without being away from the practice. But it is also important to go to conferences, because, if I think about every conference that I've attended, the networking, the connections, the friends that you make, the sharing, you can do this online, don't get me wrong. So we at Vet Rehab Summit, we have a whole networking room. There's lots of chatting. But I do enjoy live conferences too. What is your feeling about in comparison? Are you sort of an online person completely, just time-wise, or do you still attend live conferences?
I still attend live conferences, often because I'm speaking or I'm supporting what's going on. But I do, because I think it's just so important to get to know people, and for them to know you and know that you're very approachable. They can ask for advice or you can help them, and that you're, a real person. We're all people. We've all got families. We've all got other commitments. We're all there giving up our Sunday to be together. I think that social aspect is very important. And even more important for those people who are on their own, or there's only one or two of them, to actually see and talk about in a supportive environment how other people deal with problems that we all have, sort of specific cases and chat. And I love it when you break for lunch or you'll have breakout meetings and you can hear everyone really buzzing and enthusiastic and chatting. And yeah, everyone's tired or they've had to stay the night before to be there in time for the morning. But then it's a real buzz, isn't it, when we all get together, because we all love our job and we wouldn't be there. The people who love their jobs the most are the ones who get out the door and do that. I think you need that mixture. It's fantastic now. We've got, when I started, we had dial-up. It used to take you sort of a minute for a page to load. So there was no way you could do online like we do now. So it's fantastic to have that. But I think there's a place for both. I think the social aspects of online now, that we've got with our Facebook groups and other groups where we can all talk as well, all really help. But it's great to put a face to a name and just all get together, really.
I tell you one thing that I've just remembered, which I used to do in my practice, because there was no conferences and lectures and learning. We used to have once a week, we would do like a half an hour lunchtime thing. Basically, we would choose a condition and I would chat about it. I would stand in front of the whiteboard and I would just do a bit of teaching myself, to my staff members. And that's something that you guys could do. You guys could have an internal journal club. If you've got a practice, even if they're just two of you, just sit down and take an article and just discuss it. Just doing that just can really, really help in supporting your staff with some learning. It doesn't always have to be them spending time away from the practice or you putting a massive financial outlay. Just support and actually just helping them and teaching them. And if they have been to a course or a conference, asking them, to explain what they were taught. So because the more they repeat it, the more it sets in. So just supporting them in emotional sort of ways too, right, Angela?
There's nothing really that firms up your knowledge better than having to explain what you've learned or seen or heard to someone else. So I find it useful. I think the other thing you can do is invite people in to your practice. So maybe the local vet, get them to come in and perhaps do an hour's continuing education. Like we go out and do lunch and learns, invite people to us. It's a win-win. They're seeing your facilities, they're meeting you, they understand you're keen to learn. I was going to go back actually to the beginning of this conversation about if you're investing in people, them leaving the practice. I know that some of the physios I work with will choose where they work based on how supportive is that facility with continuing education, what's the funding perhaps for it, or what's the attitude to it. I think we could look at it another way, that we're investing and our staff, rather than are going to take that knowledge and go elsewhere, are going to actually want to stay with us because they feel that they're in the place that is the top of the tree in that area. They're proud of where they work. They know that they're the best at what they do, and they're going to want to get better. So I think encouraging that rather than holding people down is the way to go. You will lose some people. They're young people working for us quite often. They'll leave. But I've had even where staff leave, go and do something else completely different, go sort of to the jungle and look after orangutans or something like that, learn new skills, and they're still welcome back with those new, even more valuable members of staff. So the ones that you encourage, who you say, yeah, take a year off, go and do that, and you've sort of got your fingers crossed behind your back saying, please don't do it. But those staff are the ones that come back and they bring something else to the practice. So I think we've just got to be a bit more proud and maybe a bit more sort of sure in our knowledge that what we're doing is the right thing. And you will lose some people, but the ones you keep will be the ones that will stick with you. A lot of my staff have been with me now over 10 years, and some have been with me for 17, 18 years. And there's a reason, and it can't be because they love me, because I'm really hard to work for. It's because they value where they work, and they value the work that they do, and they do feel supported.
Yeah, I think also, just thinking about it, I think it's all about priorities. So I mean, we all want a team that works well together, that has great knowledge, that is doing all the right things, and if we want that, then we have to support our staff in it. And if I look at things like budgets, often CPD and continuing education and learning is so far down on the budget, but for me it should be a priority, because without it, you can't have the standard of practice that you want. If you're wanting to practice at a really high standard, you've got to keep up that knowledge. And the knowledge that we get from learning sets us apart from everybody else. So if you want to be at that level, you've got to keep up with that knowledge.
Definitely. And because we're a training centre, we get a huge benefit from that, because often I'm training students who are attending, but I'm also training a member of staff to be a trainer. So you're training the trainer at the same time, and it's clear that's what we're doing. And not all my members of staff want that pressure and want to go on, but the ones that do are supported to get their higher level qualifications, because they're really going to be leading the way and teaching others, and they go out again from Greyfriars to other centres, perhaps doing audits or going to help for a couple of days, and can share that knowledge. So there's kind of layers, isn't there? And it's like you say, it's picking the right staff, the ones that are really keen, that want to go on and learn, who are going to be with you for long term. Those are the ones you really want to invest in. And if you don't, you're going to fall behind, really. It's a bit like you have an advertising budget, you need to use it, and you need an education budget, and you need to use it, because that goes hand in hand, I think, with setting those standards that you're talking about when you're advertising or you're promoting your business.
Yeah, I tell you another way in which I would recommend supporting your staff, and it's something probably a lot of people are quite uncomfortable about, but is trying to encourage them to lecture. So in South Africa, when I lecture, for example, I actually get points, CPD points, because I've lectured. So I get a certain number of points for actually being a lecturer. I'm not sure if it's the same with you guys, but when you do a lecture, there's so much research that you have to do. You look into all the clinical studies behind what you're lecturing about, and that is a great way in which to learn. And it doesn't even have to be to other veterinary professionals. You can start with doing it to your client base. So you encourage your staff members to do a talk at a local dog show or something like that, or even just at your practice. Invite your clients to come and get your staff. What tends to happen is usually the owner of the practice is usually the one doing that, and that's fine to start off with, but you need to encourage your staff to start doing this too, because it gives them confidence, and it also gives them credibility with all the clients, because they obviously can see that they've got this knowledge, which they do, and a lot of the time they're just shy. And they're just scared to get up there in front of people. But just that research that you have to do in order to do a lecture is amazing learning. And also writing blogs and writing for magazines. We have got so many pet owner magazines all around the world. Every different country has got, and they are always looking for professionals to write articles. It's a great opportunity to share your knowledge, and the research you do from that you'll really help in your learning. And these are obviously
I do that with NOC. I'm not sure with the South African organisation. I'm not sure with CHA, but with NARC, yes, I get CPD points for any lecturing I do. And as you say, your lecture is 1 hour, but you've spent 2 days doing research and putting it together, and you have to learn more every time you do that. So I know, and that's a good, but now you've given me an idea, because often the staff freak out when you ask them to talk to people about things, and they're happier doing 1-to-1, 1-to-2. But actually asking them to do some client talks, because they're really knowledgeable, and then the clients will respect them. And they do kind of freak out. And mine have, even when they started doing online webinars, I sort of drag them kicking and screaming. And then you find little superstars that are really great at it, and they still don't think they're great, but you know they are. And you find people that actually have really good communication skills, and they grow as people, don't they? Their confidence just increases. They're much better with clients and they've got all that research in the back of their head to fall on when someone asks a difficult question.
You know, often vet rehabbers are so nervous to do lectures.
Yeah.
And I see lots of comments, you know, when you chat about it in the Facebook group, you know, people are scared of, you know, a vet or somebody asking them questions that they don't know. And you guys got nothing to be scared about. First of all, you know more than you think you do, okay?
Yeah.
You're probably the most knowledgeable person sitting in that room when you're doing a lecture, one of these kind of lectures. And the other thing is, it's okay not to know everything, you know. If you don't, you just say, that's a really great question. I'm going to look into that and I'm going to get back to you. Come and give me your name and email address. And if you're just, you know, if you're just real about it and just say, like, that's a great question, I'm not really sure of the answer. That's
Never been asked that one before. You know, I've done this 10 times. That's a great question. I'm going to find the answer and include it in my next talk. There is nothing wrong with saying, I don't know, because there's going to be lots of stuff, like you say, they don't know. And I don't think we value our knowledge and how specific and specialist it is enough, you know. And I often have this where I'm happy to say to them, look, you know way more than the people who are coming to see you about this subject, because otherwise they wouldn't be giving up their time to come and listen to you. They're there because they want to be. They're not coming to destroy you or make you look stupid or anything like that. They're going to ask questions. If you don't know the answer, say, I don't know the answer. You know, there's got to be the odd question, isn't there? Or I don't know the answer, but who else in the room can contribute? And it's great. Then they're all off talking and you've got 5 minutes of thinking time before you start talking again.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm so pro getting vet rehabbers to talk, and not only just for the learning bit. This is the way that we get our field known. So many vet rehabbers saying, you know, I'm really struggling to get the vets in the area to refer to me or to come on board. And the bottom line is you got to get out there and educate. And so the more of us that do it, whether it's us or our staff, there are loads of benefits for doing this. And another extra is basically getting the field of veterinary rehabilitation, just increase the awareness in your area. And each and everyone, you can all do it just even in your own town. So the more you do this and the more your staff do it, the more people become aware of you and what we're able to achieve. Because I think obviously we all know that this education about what we can do is limited. So it's up to all of us. So there's not one person somewhere in the world who's going to change this. Each and every one of us has to sort it out.
Absolutely. I mean, Hydro webinars started from you and me sitting down saying, look, there's lots of rehab staff, but there's not much for Hydro people. And we need to have some education that starts at the basic level and carries people on. And so from one conversation, sort of over a cup of tea, or it might have been wine, I'm not sure, we kind of, you know, we developed it, didn't we? Quite quickly, really, because it was an obvious need. For the people, you know, we're talking like we can all get to vet conferences and get online and that, but there's people on their own, and there's only 2 or 3 of them in the whole country. And the online education and talking, it's just so valuable to them. But they also, I think, can contribute, because we want to know, how is it in, I don't know, Chile or Argentina or remote New Zealand, or actually even remote Scotland, and share. And like you say, why not do a blog about, you know, your typical week and the challenges you have to face with perhaps inclement weather and power cuts and all of those kind of things. You know, we can all contribute, can't we? You know, how do you manage when there's not 5 hydrotherapists, when there's only 1 of you? Do you get someone in to help, or do you just have to come up with clever workarounds, you know? So I think everyone's got something to contribute. And like you say, doing the research, working out how to put it together, write it, how to talk, how to structure, is really good. Just to help you with structuring your work as well. Those skills are sort of, I suppose, soft skills that are transferable to other parts of your business.
So another thing I've just thought about, Angela, so I was just thinking about, you know, all the things that we can encourage our staff to do. And the other thing is maybe just sometimes just giving them a little bit of research time, because practice is just go, 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 go. So giving them time to be able to research for talks, giving them time to be able to read up on articles or read up in textbooks. I mean, because I'm just a firm believer in just being a sponge and just getting information. That's often a big problem, is that they just don't have the time. And especially when they are working for someone, they've got sort of set hours and they're consulting. Maybe we as, if you have your own practice, you need to have a look at your staff's schedule and just say, well, like once a week, just give them half an hour just to sit down and read a textbook, or just to read an article, or give them the opportunity to be able to learn, because we all are juggling family, work, and if we schedule time for them, hopefully they will take that time and use it well.
And I think that's something that I'm perhaps poor at. I mean, it's even hard for us to schedule half an hour to have a total staff meeting. It's hard to do, and that. Certainly, but there have been times where, when we're preparing qualifications, where I've got 3 members of staff all working on different things, all actually really quiet and reading. I did a quick sort of survey around my staff before we did this talk, or Facebook Live, and said, how are you learning? What are you doing? Lots of them were doing online stuff, but one of them said, I go to the library. And it's like, or maybe that's a bit old fashioned, but like, what's better than a book? Just working your way through a book, thinking time, quiet time. I still prefer books over everything, reading. That's what I grew up with. Obviously we need specific books that are relevant. And that was one of the things we said, where we're accessing education, making sure if you're buying a book that it's the latest version, that it's up to date, those kind of things. So we ended up, actually, because we knew we were doing this Facebook Live, having quite a discussion about where were they getting sort of free education from, and knowledge. And occasionally they hit me with something absolutely random and fascinating about some research that they picked up, that then makes us think, well, maybe we need to change what we're doing or look at it differently. I've emailed you, Megan, some links to some of the education that my staff are accessing. Some of it's free, online, slightly different perspective than the online pet health and hydro webinar. So I think if people want to email in, we can share those links. We just tested them, so we know they're up to date today. So there's quite a lot of free continuing education out there, but if you're doing it specifically for CPD points for your rehab or your hydro organisation, you just need to check that it's on subject enough to count.
Yeah, you had such a great idea there about the library. I was actually just thinking, like, who in practice actually has a library for your vet rehab book? So do you guys? And I wonder if the rest of you guys actually keep all your books at the practice so that everyone can access them. And I just thought about another idea. What you could always do if you've got a few staff members is have like a list of them, and then every week you could actually just print a journal article or some research, and you could put it into a file. And when one of tell your staff members, when you get a chance, have a read of it, and when they read it, they can just tick it. And it's just interesting and new things that have come out. You can provide them with that content and put it in the library. If they get a chance, they can read it and they can tick it once they're done, and you can go and have a look and see who's been keeping up to date. And even you can even make a summary for them to make it easier. So yeah, those are just a few ideas. So I hope you guys have enjoyed all these tips and ideas. If you guys have any other ideas how you support your staff, or even if you yourself are employed and your boss does something which you think is great, any suggestions, please guys, if you're listening to this as a recording, share them in the comments. This is what these Facebook Lives are for. They're actually for us to learn from one another. To learn from how everyone else is doing it, because sometimes you guys come up with the most amazing ideas, and everyone sort of globally can learn from it.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to go and look at our schedule now, and just, it's reminded me and made me think about time. I need to make time for them to have time, because we're just full on, or just so full on. It's just actually, when do we pull back? and actually spend some time thinking about what we do rather than just getting our patients through and getting everything done. One of our physios is about to start her MSc and start doing some research, so I'm going to encourage a couple of members of staff to get involved with that, doing some of the filming and things we need to do. That's my Whippet is behind me. My puppy Whippet is just trying to come in screen every now and again. So yeah, I think time rather than budget is probably more precious and more difficult.
Yeah, exactly. So for those of you that are looking at maximizing your time, I do have some free training. So there you guys, you go. It's something free on how to maximize your time. I don't know if your staff members have watched that training, and I can send you the link. But it's all about time blocking and just about prioritizing so that we maximize the time that we have instead of wasting our time with distractions and endless emails and things like that. So if you want to have a look at that link, send me a message. I'll send it through to you. Okay.
I think Rupert Whippet is just going enough. That's time, guys. We're finished. So
cool. Thanks so much, Bedri. It's awesome to have a great day, guys. Bye.
Bye.